Dean Martin was halfway through Everybody Loves Somebody at the Copacabana when he noticed his new bodyguard standing in the wings had a distinctive scar running from his left ear to his jaw, the exact scar the FBI had warned him about 3 months earlier. The man they called Joey Scars Torrino, wanted for 7 murders across 3 states, was standing 10 feet away, supposedly protecting Dean, while likely waiting for the perfect moment to kill him. When Dean locked eyes with Joey and saw the recognition flash across the hitman's face, that Dean knew exactly who he was, what happened next caused a stampede that injured 40 people and shut down the most famous nightclub in New York City, April 3, 1969. The Copacabana was in its golden era, the crown jewel of New York nightlife where mobsters sat next to movie stars and everyone pretended not to notice. Dean Martin was 3 nights into a 2-week engagement, his first extended New York run in 5 years. At 51, he was at the peak of his powers. His TV show dominated Thursday nights, his record still went gold, and the Copa was paying him $40,000 a week, astronomical money for a nightclub act. The room was configured for 800, but they'd squeezed in nearly 1,000. Fire codes be damned when Dean Martin was performing. His regular bodyguard, Mike Patterson, had come down with appendicitis 2 days earlier, rushed to Mount Sinai for emergency surgery. The Copa's management had quickly arranged a replacement through their security company, a thick-set Italian guy named Joey Russo, who came with good references from protection work in Miami. Dean hadn't thought twice about it. The Copa handled security for dozens of stars. They knew what they were doing. Joey seemed professional enough, quiet, alert, always positioned where he should be. He had a nasty scar on his face that he claimed came from Korea, and his eyes were constantly moving, scanning for threats. What Dean didn't know was that 3 months earlier in January, he'd been visited by 2 FBI agents at his Beverly Hills home. They'd shown him surveillance photos of various mob hitmen, warning him that certain factions in the Chicago outfit were unhappy about testimony Dean's former manager had given to a grand jury. One photo in particular stood out, Joseph Joey Scars Torrino, a freelance killer who worked for whoever paid best. The scar was distinctive, a curved line from left ear to jaw, courtesy of a bar fight in Cleveland. "If you ever see this man," the agent had said, "get away immediately and call us." The Copa that night was packed with the usual crowd. The Rat Pack table was full. Frank was in town. Sammy had just finished his own show at the Latin Quarter, and Peter Lawford had brought 2 Kennedy cousins. The mob tables were occupied, too. Tommy Lucchese's crew had their regular spot, and Carlo Gambino's son was hosting a birthday party in the back corner. The room smelled of cigarettes, perfume, and money. Dean was in fine form, working through his set with the casual perfection that made him the highest-paid nightclub performer in America. He'd just finished "Ain't That a Kick in the Head?" and was settling into the slower tempo of "Everybody Loves Somebody," his signature song that always brought the room to hushed attention. The spotlight narrowed to just him, the orchestra soft behind him, when he noticed Joey Russo had moved from his usual position by the kitchen doors to the wings, stage left, much closer than necessary. Something about the way Joey stood, weight forward on his toes, right hand inside his jacket, made Dean glance over mid-verse. That's when the stage lights caught Joey's face at just the right angle, illuminating the scar in sharp relief. The curved line from ear to jaw, exactly as the FBI photo had shown. Dean's voice caught for just a moment on "When Somebody Loves You," his mind racing through the implications. This wasn't Joey Russo. This was Joey Scars Torrino, and he was 10 feet away. Dean forced himself to keep singing, but his eyes stayed on Joey, who was now watching him intently. Their eyes met, and Dean saw the exact moment Joey realized he'd been recognized. The hitman's expression shifted from casual surveillance to sharp calculation. His hand moved slightly inside his jacket, and Dean could see the outline of what was definitely a gun. The orchestra behind Dean played on, unaware that their lead performer was having a silent standoff with a professional killer. Frank Sinatra, sitting at his table, noticed Dean's distraction first. He followed Dean's gaze to the wings, saw the bodyguard's position and posture, and his street instincts kicked in. Something was wrong. Frank stood up slowly, his movement catching Sammy's attention, then Peter's. The Kennedy cousins, drunk on champagne, kept laughing at some private joke, oblivious to the tension building in the room. Dean made a decision. He couldn't stop mid-song without causing panic, but he couldn't continue standing still like a target. He started moving as he sang, drifting stage right, away from Joey, turning what should have been a stationary ballad into an awkward walking performance. The orchestra conductor looked confused, but kept directing. Joey moved too, paralleling Dean's movement, maintaining his firing angle. Dean reached the end of the verse and made a choice that would either save or doom him. He stopped singing, but kept the orchestra playing, then spoke directly into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've just remembered an urgent matter. Everyone needs to leave the Copa. Right now, no questions." The audience laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke, but Frank Sinatra was already moving, grabbing Sammy's arm. He'd seen Dean perform drunk, angry, sick, and heartbroken, but he'd never seen him look genuinely terrified. Frank knew that look. He'd seen it in guys who suddenly realized they were about to die. Joey Scars stepped out from the wings onto the stage, his hand still inside his jacket. "Nobody moves," he said, loud enough for the front tables to hear. "Mr. Martin and I have business to discuss." That's when pandemonium started. A woman at a front table screamed, "He's got a gun!" even though no weapon was visible yet. The scream triggered something primal. Suddenly, everyone was standing, pushing, trying to get to the exits. The Copa had 4 exits, but 3 were narrow, and 1 was through the kitchen. 1,000 people trying to leave through inadequate exits created instant chaos. Dean stood frozen at the microphone as tables overturned. Women in evening gowns fell, men in tuxedos climbed over chairs. The Lucchese table flipped their table to create a barrier, pulling their own guns. Gambino's son was shouting orders to his men. The Kennedy cousins were being literally carried out by Secret Service agents who'd been sitting 2 tables away. "Stop!" Dean shouted into the microphone, the feedback screeching. "You're hurting each other. Stop pushing." But it was too late. The stampede had begun. An elderly woman went down near the main exit, people stepping on her in their panic. A waiter was crushed against the bar. The orchestra abandoned their instruments, fleeing through the backstage exit. Joey Scars stood perfectly still on stage, watching Dean, seemingly unbothered by the chaos around him. Frank Sinatra fought against the crowd, trying to get to the stage, trying to get to Dean. "That's Joey Scars," he shouted to anyone who could hear. "That's a fucking hitman!" The revelation rippled through those who heard it, increasing the panic. Joey Scars, the name was legend in New York. 7 confirmed kills, probably twice that in reality. "You knew," Joey Scars said, stepping closer to Dean while the Copa erupted in chaos around them. "The moment you saw me, you knew. Smart man, Mr. Martin. Too smart." Dean held his ground at the microphone, though every instinct told him to run. "Who sent you, Joey? Chicago? Philly? Or are you freelancing?" "Does it matter?" Joey's hand started to emerge from his jacket. "You think naming names is going to stop this?" That's when Frank Sinatra reached the stage, climbing up from the side. "Joey, you pull that piece in here. You're dead before Dean hits the ground. You know who's in this room?" Joey laughed. "Bunch of old men playing gangster? I counted 12 guns in here, Frankie. None of them fast enough." The stampede was getting worse. Glass was breaking at the bar as people climbed over it seeking the kitchen exit. Someone had pulled the fire alarm, adding to the chaos. Sirens were already audible in the distance, NYPD responding to multiple emergency calls. But on stage, time seemed to slow down as four men faced off. Dean at the microphone, Joey Scars with his hand on his gun, Frank moving closer, and now Tommy Lucchese's top enforcer, Anthony Tony Ducks Corallo, who'd somehow made it through the crowd to the stage stairs. "Joey," Tony Ducks said calmly, "you're surrounded by made men from 3 families. You kill Dean Martin in front of 1,000 witnesses. There's nowhere on earth you can hide." "I'm already dead," Joey replied, and everyone understood. He'd taken a contract he couldn't refuse, probably threatened with something worse than death. "At least this way I go out famous. The man who killed Dean Martin at the Copa." Dean found his voice. "What about your mother, Joey?" "Marie Torrino, lives in Bay Ridge. Nice lady, goes to St. Patrick's every morning. What happens to her when you do this?" Joey's face twitched. "You don't know nothing about my mother. I know she thinks you're a construction worker in Florida. I know she prays for you every day. You think she wants to see her son gunned down on the 11 o'clock news?" Dean was improvising, guessing, but he saw he'd hit something. "Let me help you, Joey. There's another way out of this." Joey Scars pulled the gun fully out, a chrome .45 that caught the stage lights. The remaining crowd screamed and hit the floor. Dean didn't move, didn't flinch, just kept talking. "Joey, you got 2 choices. Shoot me and die in the next 10 seconds, or put the gun down, and I personally guarantee your safety out of here." "My safety?" Joey laughed bitterly. "I don't finish this job. I'm dead anyway. At least this way." The sound of multiple hammers cocking echoed through the devastated nightclub. The Lucchese crew, Gambino's men, and 3 off-duty cops had all drawn weapons, all aimed at Joey. The hitman was surrounded by at least 15 guns, but his .45 stayed pointed at Dean's chest. 20 feet, Joey said. "I can't miss at 20 feet. Suddenly, Dean did something insane. He started walking toward Joey, slowly, steadily, right into the gun barrel. "So shoot me, Joey. But look me in the eyes when you do it. Look at the man you're killing. Stay back." Joey's hand was shaking now. Dean kept walking. 15 feet. 10 feet. The gun was trembling violently. Dean reached 5 feet and stopped, the barrel almost touching his chest. "You're not a killer, Joey. You're a scared kid from Brooklyn who got in too deep. I can see it in your eyes." "You don't know me," Joey screamed, tears starting to stream down his scarred face. "I know you haven't pulled the trigger yet," Dean said softly. "A real killer would have shot me already." The police sirens were right outside now. NYPD was surrounding the building. In the distance, Dean could hear cops on bullhorns telling everyone to exit calmly. But on stage, everything hung on the next second. Joey's gun hand dropped. The .45 fell to the stage floor with a metallic clatter that echoed through the ruins of the Copa. Joey fell to his knees, sobbing. "They got my sister. Said they'd kill her if I didn't do this. My little sister. She's only 16. Dean immediately pulled Joey to his feet. "Frank, Tony, we're getting him out of here. Now!" The cops burst through the main entrance, guns drawn, but Dean was already shielding Joey with his own body. "This man just saved my life," Dean shouted. "He's with me." The Copacabana was closed for 3 weeks while they repaired the damage. $200,000 worth of destroyed furniture, broken glass, and trampled fixtures. 43 people were hospitalized from the stampede, though miraculously no one died. The elderly woman who'd been trampled sued the Copa and won $50,000. Dean personally paid her settlement, feeling responsible for the panic he'd triggered. The incident became known as The Copa Stampede of '69, making headlines worldwide. Joey Torrino's story came out in pieces. The Chicago outfit had kidnapped his teenage sister to force him to kill Dean. Revenge for testimony that had sent 3 of their men to prison. Dean used every connection he had, legitimate and otherwise, to get Joey's sister back safely. Frank Sinatra personally went to Chicago with $500,000 of his own money and a message. Touch the girl or Joey, and every celebrity in America stops playing your clubs. The sister was released unharmed within 48 hours. Joey turned state's evidence in exchange for witness protection, his testimony eventually convicting 6 members of the Chicago outfit. Before disappearing into his new identity, he met with Dean one last time. "Why didn't you run?" Joey asked. "When you recognized me, why didn't you just run?" Dean's answer became legend in mob circles. "Because running would have caused the same panic, and you would have shot me in the back. At least facing you, I had a chance to see you were human." The FBI later revealed that 17 hitmen had been contracted to kill various entertainers between 1968 and 1970, all related to mob testimony. Dean's confrontation with Joey's scars changed everything. It proved that even marked targets could survive through courage and humanity. The Copacabana instituted metal detectors the next month, the first nightclub in America to do so. Dean never performed at the Copa again, despite offers of $100,000 a week. When asked why, he said, "Some stages are haunted by what almost happened." He did, however, pay for Joey Torrino's mother's medical bills for the rest of her life, though she never knew who her benefactor was. In his final interview before his death, Dean revealed, "That night at the Copa, I learned something. Every killer is somebody's son, somebody's brother. Even Joey's scars was just a scared kid when you looked close enough."